Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Dalmar, together with my co-host Mark Rohn at Just Statewide News Service, jbiztechvalley.com, and now, as you could see, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Yeah, Rabbi, and I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. And one of the levels of government that we have are the school boards.
Yeah.
So with us today is a very special guest. Just got recently elected to the Niskayuna School Board outside Schenectady, Howard Schlossberg. And welcome to the Jewish View. It's a pleasure. You're on the Niskayuna School Board. So, wow, that's great.
We give you a mazel tov for being elected.
Thank you very much.
Thank you know, I saw your signs up everywhere, and I said, "Is that a Kennedy?" You know,
Cousin Ed.
A cousin? No relation to this?
Not that we know of.
Okay. Because I think Caroline is married to a Schlossberg doctor too, right? Yeah. So you're a doctor, and are you? You're an oncologist, hematologist.
Correct.
Why? And you're with NYOH, New York Oncology Hematology, but you're also with Ellis Hospital.
We work out of many hospitals in the region, and most of my hospital stuff is at Ellis.
Okay. So first of all, what made you want to run for school board as a very busy doctor, and you got a wife, you got two girls, you know, what's your, two daughters, I should say. So, you know, why run for school board, which doesn't pay anything, and you have to campaign out of, I mean, I don't know if you did fundraising, but you probably didn't have to.
We wrote checks. That was part of the campaign. But one of the main reasons you mentioned was exactly what you mentioned. My children have been in the district for years. Like so many people, what goes on there is critical to me and the whole community. And you mentioned my wife. She has been an example of service to the community for many years herself. And maybe I just wanted to try to match her. She serves, she was a co-president of Sisterhood at Temple. She's on the board of Federation. She's the president of the JCC in Schenectady. I can't compete with that.
So your wife is Michelle
Osterlich.
Osterlich, okay. So yeah, she had kept her maiden name, I guess.
You know, my sister's actually hematologist, oncologist, but in Pittsburgh, and I know her schedule, and I just don't see where you even have the time. I mean, she's just, I mean, it's a very, not only a lot of hours, but very draining. You must be full of energy.
I'm full of coffee most of the time. That's what does it.
How old are you?
43.
You don't look, I thought you were in your 20s. Well, you got
I mean, you do balance it. I mean, you have a family life. I mean, that's a really big schedule that you're...
It depends how you do it. Over time, I have adapted in some ways. I wake up at 3 or 4, depending on the day, try to get to the hospital 4 or 5, do that, go to the office. By front-loading things early, I can often get home and see the kids and my wife for dinner. And then, for example, Monday was back out at 6 for a school board meeting. So it can be done, you just can't sleep very much.
Well, that's why I say you must have a lot of energy doing that. But, you know, kudos to you that, you know, of course, being a doctor in itself is a service to the community, helping people. But, you know, I know because many doctors, and not only my sister, but many doctors, it is such a full schedule in being in the hospital, on call. They really are not that civil-minded. I mean, they're minded, I guess. They want to do well, but they just don't even have the time. I mean, even for example, to say to help out in the synagogue, you know, they're just busy all the time, or come to the synagogue. It's very difficult life, but...
There's a lot on the plate, and I think for a lot of folks.
And not only that, but, you know, there are conferences that are out of town, like you just went to one in New York City recently, and it was a school boards association. And you wanted to I guess you wanted to network and get acclimated into what it is to be a school board member. So what was that conference like, and what did you learn? And give us some insight, because I wasn't able to go to that.
So it's actually multiple parts. There's a whole education component. For example, before the conference itself officially opened Sunday night, I spent 8 hours doing a school law seminar, and that was very eye-opening. Similar to medicine, there's a ton of regulation in education, and you need to know as much as you can about that. So we did that, I guess, phase. Then there was the opening reception, where, among other things, one of our previous superintendents, John Yagelski, got an award, which was always nice. And then the next day and a half were all educational sessions, as well as some time to get to meet other people, hear about how they're doing things in their own districts.
Wasn't there something about the Niskayuna band or something?
Our jazz band played at the opening ceremony. Thank you for plugging us.
Oh, okay.
But you know, that usually, I'm from Delmar, so Bethlehem and Niskayuna are the top school districts in the area. So, you know, Niskayuna always had a lot of Jewish kids, so I talked to them. It's great. What did you see to join or just to help out? What do you see the lackings or something? Hey, this could be better.
I think actually the previous board, if that's what we're referring to, was good. And one of my thoughts was not to try to come in and change things and show everyone how to do it, although I have my own ideas. Yeah. It was really to maintain. I wanted to contribute. I think I do have some experience with this sort of thing from my day job. I do help manage the practice sitting on the board of that. We have the same budget issues and staffing and plenty of regulation. And I thought I could contribute. And I had 5 opponents, or 5 runners in the race. And I said then, and I'll say now, any of them would have done a great job.
There were 6 candidates total.
And how many could win?
And you were the biggest vote getter.
I think I might have gotten lucky with that.
Over 1,400 votes you got. You got 26.2% of the vote. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Had a lot of signs.
It wasn't a lot of lawn signs? It wasn't the last name that did it. No?
That rarely helps.
Oh, okay. Well, sometimes people do vote for the name, it's ethnic affiliations and things like that. But yeah, so you are on the New York Oncology Hematology Board of Directors. You got your bachelor's from Cornell in Ithaca. You got your medical degree from Temple University in Philadelphia. You had your residency at Temple.
Right.
Yeah. And then you had a fellowship in hematology medical oncology at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital in Philadelphia. So why move here from Philadelphia? I mean, that seems like a wonderful place.
Listen, Mark, you're making it like, why would you want to move here? This is the place to be.
Well, I'm asking because my brother's in Philadelphia area, and he's a doctor. He's a nephrologist, and he moved from Brooklyn to Philadelphia via some other places, and he wanted to settle in Philadelphia. So I'm just curious,
Philly's a great town.
Yeah,
I grew up there. Correct. Yeah. But as for so many reasons, it's because my wife told me to.
Oh.
She grew up in Connecticut. Her family is actually from here in Albany. And her mother left Albany when she was a young kid, went to Connecticut. Michelle grew up there. And then I dragged her out of that to go down to Philadelphia for a decade for training. She's an attorney. She worked in the city. And then when it was time to look for a job, it was her turn to decide where to go. And we came back to family here in this region.
Oh, and where is your family?
Mine is now splitting time between Florida and the Jersey Shore.
Oh, okay.
As well as the typical North Jersey and the usual routine.
You say Catskills in Miami Beach over here. It's the same, close enough over there.
Is that where you grew up in Jersey? Or?
No, I'm from a western suburb of Philadelphia called Broomall, that you probably have never heard of. But you may have heard of Haverford, Bryn Mawr,
yes.
Towns right by us.
Right by you, okay. So what made you want to get into medical oncology, hematology? What brought you to that? When you could, because you started out just in general medical practice, and you internal medicine, and then you wanted to specialize. Why did you choose that?
So during training, you get exposed to a lot of different things, and pretty much whatever you're doing at the moment is what you think you want to do. So for a while, I wanted to be a surgeon, I wanted to be a pediatrician, I wanted to do everything. And then I did some time in oncology and hematology, and what caught my eye was that there was always something different. There was always something new coming down the pike, always a great hope for this. Maybe this will be great, and if this isn't, well, we got this other thing coming. I wanted something that was always changing, always trying to improve. Not saying other specialties are not, but the pace of innovation really appealed to me.
Let's talk about that. I mean, because some of our viewers, we had actually some cancer survivors on the show before, and they were not medical people. I mean, they could just tell their good story, but you're a medical person. How has, you're, like we just say, you're not so young. I mean, you've been around for a few years. how has it been changing, or even looking for the future? What do you see in the next few years coming up? The survival rate, for example.
Well, I'd actually back up a little bit
All right.
to say what's changing. We talk about breast cancer, lung cancer. To some extent, that's true, but what you really have is your own cancer. A cancer is when a cell in your body breaks and starts doing things it's not supposed to do, and in different people, different things go wrong in that cell. So what we are learning is that different genetic mutations are driving this to happen. And previously, we would say, well, this drug works for lung cancers. What we're trying to move to is, well, this drug works for this mutation, and we don't care so much where the cell comes from. We care if the drug works on that. And that is, it's fits and starts trying to get to that full personalized approach. That, I think, is the future.
Now, how is the spleen involved with hematology, oncology?
So the spleen is basically a giant lymph node. This sits over there, filters the blood. It sometimes causes trouble if lymphoma, which is a white blood cell cancer, gets lodged there. It can also get overactive and start grabbing all your cells going through.
Now, what if someone doesn't have a spleen? A baby doesn't have a spleen, or there's no spleen. How is that detrimental to the health of an individual?
There are a couple kinds of bacteria that are especially protected against by the spleen. So if you are missing the spleen, there's a few, basically 3 main classes of bacteria that you are at increased risk for of developing an infection.
And which are the 3?
Haemophilus, Neisseria meningitidis. I don't make these
Helps
names
you
up.
now, Mark.
Well, I thought he had, I didn't think he had Latin names for them. I thought
No,
he had
this is going back to med school. I had to dredge it out.
Okay. So it's not like mold or anything?
Not typically, although it's part of the immune system. So you never really know how things will interact.
Okay. So what's the, do you see, are you putting anything, making any connection between education in the schools and learning more about cancer? I mean, is there any way of just having more health classes in the schools where the kids would be more aware of what they're eating? And
it's actually, that is happening without the medical profession.
in Niskayuna?
Yep. One of my first board meetings, before I was involved, a parent came up, was talking about the nutritional parts about the school lunches, felt very strongly and correctly about ways that it could be improved, and that is not the only person. The high school is trying to improve their healthy offerings, and finding the kids are actually, taking it up.
Well, they better be right, because they got someone on the board now who understands what they're talking about.
As long as it tastes good, then I'm in.
And what about this red meat thing that, they say that there are certain red meats that, that would be more cancer-causing, I guess, than others that...
It's actually not the meat so much as what you do to it. And when you cook it...
curing it, you mean?
The cooking, actually.
Yeah.
When you cook it, it changes some of the chemicals to make some of them more likely to lead to disease. But like so many things, if you ate only barbecued meat all day, you might have a problem. But what I tell people is everything in moderation. It works.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what they're supposed to do, fruits, vegetables. Nobody does it. But we all know what we're supposed to do.
Okay. So you have a healthy lifestyle, healthy diet, or?
No.
No. Okay.
I try to some
Although you look
extent.
healthy, I mean, it's one...
I do try, but I certainly enjoy having a piece of cake and some cookies every now and then.
Well, that's moderation.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
So then I'm very healthy.
Okay.
My sister actually always says she talks to people, again, she's in oncology, she says exercise is really a very #1 thing that she feels is, I don't know if she feels or
No,
it's
she's
medically.
totally correct. There's been a couple of studies showing in some diseases, for example, advanced colon cancer, moderate exercise is almost as effective as some kinds of chemotherapy in prolonging life. And it's hard to know, is it that the people who can exercise are doing well and they're healthy, or is it the exercise itself that makes you healthy? But it certainly can't be bad for you to keep the heart and lungs and all that in good shape. So I encourage it.
See, I always think of the people who are joggers and runners. You always hear they have bad knees, they need knee replacements, they need hip replacements, ankles break, know. You're sort of getting into that territory where you're doing too much damage to your body. And you know, why are you running? Who are you running from? You know, it's like all these people.
Yeah, at least they don't
running,
have cancer over
you know,
there.
they don't have cancer. They got a whole lot of other things.
Again, everything in moderation.
Moderation.
Right.
You know? So what do you see as your priorities to be on the school board? What do you know? What was your platform as you went around campaigning?
You know, it's funny because, as probably for many politicians, what you find when you get there may be different than what you think before. So some of the things that I thought were very important were to try to sort of equalize support for all sorts of kinds of kids, both academically advanced and academically challenged, because there is a lot of support given to both sort of extremes, and I had a kind of feeling that maybe the kids in the middle were not getting as much attention. I also felt strongly that foreign language should be started earlier. There's a lot of indication that that seems to work better the earlier you are when you learn a language. When I got into the position, I found that these are great priorities, and I still feel strongly about them, but there's just really such a limitation in resources, and also so much from on high about what you have to do. There is not as much room to maneuver locally.
No, I just want to say there's two things that, you know, Mark and I have so many, literally hundreds of guests on, and one of them was the Albany superintendent of schools, and Albany High has a dropout rate of 50%. So I wanted to ask Dad, what is the dropout rate in Niskayuna High? And number two is just, you know, when people in Niskayuna, again, I live in Delmar, but they're always complaining about the taxes. You know, Rabbi, oh, I got to pay so much, I can't donate. But in any case, the taxes are very high. So you say limited resource. People say we're paying through the nose for money, and then you come back and saying, well, we just don't, you know, have the money for this, that, or the other thing. Saying, well, how much money you need already? I mean, they're paying so much.
It's a very tough question. Part of the problem for all of New York State and many places is that districts are funded solely by property taxes. And then money that was coming in was taken away in the last few years while not allowing property taxes to be raised. So nobody wants to raise taxes. I don't like paying the taxes,
Sure not.
But my kids have to go to school. And if they take away money that was funding that, it's got to come from somewhere.
But do you think that there should be more of an emphasis on private donations to public schools, or naming rights for different buildings, and, you know, doing things like, you know?
I've not thought about that particularly, but my first thought would be it's probably not a good idea, because anytime someone's writing a check, strings come with that. And I think we see some of that with the charter school movement, that there's some debate over what the real benefits, what the real goals are, as opposed to public schools where it just, this is your school. Everyone is involved.
What do you see as the biggest challenge in the Niskayuna schools?
I think we talked about resources. We would love to be able to enrich more than the general curriculum, have more offerings. There are kids trying to get more advanced classes that we just don't have. There are kids that would benefit from more support again at the other end, and just the folks in the middle who would all benefit from not just academic opportunities, but clubs, scholastics, that kind of thing.
I read somewhere where you were advocating for an after-school program possibly to be at the JCC, but then it went somewhere else, and you had a little back and forth with one of the other school board members possibly. I don't know if I'm getting this right.
No. I had hoped. My kids went to the JCC for their, you know, for a lot of time. I think it's a great institution. As I said, my wife, you know, helps run it, and I think it's a great place, and was hoping that they would get the contract. The folks who set about doing it, they went through the process. They had a very reasonable and good process, and the JCC lost. And the only back and forth was me saying I wish they had won. But sometimes you got to get together behind the decision and go forward.
So who won? Do you remember?
There's an organization called TSL.
TSL. And what is that?
They are a company that runs a number of daycare centers and programs like this.
What does it stand for, TSL?
I believe it is the name of the three founders, the first names of the three founders, ex-teachers.
And that's, but it's located in Niskayuna. It's not like in someone's home.
No, it's a full company with support and staff and all that stuff.
And
yes.
it wasn't something that was wired or anything, right? No, they had a bidding process?
Right, there was a whole proposal, committee meetings, they scored everything according to what they decided.
Okay, now, so if the JCC wants to win this contract in the future, you're going to help them with some advice as to how to win this contract?
They know what to, every
They know what to do?
organization knows what to do. Provide the most service for the least price. That's how you win a contract, whether it's a stealth bomber or a after-school program.
Okay, so, and what's the benefit of having an after-school program? I mean, it's got to be more than just babysitting until the parents are done with work.
Right, there's an educational component and socialization component. I'll tell you one of the things that I would like in an after-school program is homework support. These kids, and we could go on for hours about that, the amount of homework that these kids have and the struggles it causes. Niskayuna has what's called an access period in middle school and some other similar periods in high school where the kids have an opportunity to do that. But if you're giving a kid 2-3 hours of homework, you can't do all that in a little extra time in school. So an opportunity to have some support to go through the extra work, it actually extends the academic day, which is another thing that could be debated at length.
Okay, and
Do
you
you
would
have any
support
poor
that
kids?
you would
Yeah.
support extending the academic day.
Intellectually, I think it would be interesting to see what happened. Practically, that would
Teachers
cause
union
so
with problems.
not just teachers, but you got to keep the lights on and the water flowing. It's
Are there per children in Niskayuna? I mean, poverty?
absolutely, we have homeless kids in this.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
We find a home for them.
Niskayuna
No.
is commonly thought of as a very wealthy community.
Yeah, right.
The demographics are not what they used to be, is my understanding, and you can see some of it.
See, because I always talked to so many people in the community. This actually was in Schenectady, your next door neighbor, and there was a lot of poverty. I mean, whatever Niskayuna has, I'm sure Schenectady has a lot more. And they just say, the teacher was very frustrated and just saying that, the parents don't know how to come to even to a parent meeting at night. She says, I think 3 out of 20, 25 parents of children. And goes on and on. She says, I have to pay for supplies for these kids. They don't even come. So I guess that's really an issue also nowadays. I mean, people, like you say, people are homeless. I mean, how can you're talking to 7th degree, the homework, they're lucky they go to school, some of these kids. So I'm saying the dropout rate, again, I don't know what Niskayuna is, but in all, it's 50%. I mean, they're just dropped out. I mean, I'm sure they're dumped out at grammar school. I mean, they're just buzzed. They're done already with school. A lot of these kids, and maybe they have to go to school in grammar school, but
You've hit on many critical points.
yeah, I know, it's a shame.
Niskayuna graduates about 91% of kids to college, and I think the graduation rate itself is something like 96, 97%.
Very good.
But the exact point that you mentioned is the family support. You can live in a community with no money and whatever, but if your parents are involved, if there is a family, if there are parents to be involved and to push forward and to help out, you're going to be more successful even than a rich kid who has no support. Niskayuna thrives on the involvement of the parents. It can sometimes make it difficult getting the email saying this is what I want, but it's great that there are people paying attention and they want something for their kids.
To do well over
Yeah.
it. So, I mean, I think that's a very important point. That's what she was saying, this teacher, that the parents just aren't involved and they don't care. And with children, oh yeah, but I really want to do 2-3 hours of homework. Even my mother doesn't care two hoots what I do. She doesn't mind if I look TV. So you have to have a very motivated child, and most of the time you lose. I mean, I feel society loses. I feel bad about that because I say I have like 10 jobs as a rabbi. One of them is going to prisons. And, you talk about it, people think, oh, well, kids dropped out, and then I see them later on what's going to happen, and now change a child when they're 20, 30, 40 years old over here. Now start getting them an education, what they do try prison. But that's what I'm saying. I see society's ills, crime, all these major ills start with the school. You know, I mean, if you give a school, then they'll have a decent job, and then they won't do crime, and they won't sit around in the corner, do nothing, and go on drugs. I mean, I've seen it all, and you know, because I'm a rabbi. But you know, it starts. That's why I mentioned this point: get a good education, and you won't have to fly off the pan over here and then do all these crazy things.
That's very true.
So what's the dropout rate in Niskayuna?
I think it's something like 2 or 3% don't go
Very
through.
good.
I could be wrong. I believe the 91% is. I'm pretty sure about the 91% for college, but I could be wrong.
That's excellent.
But 91% of the students at Niskayuna schools go on to college.
I think so. It sounds
Niskayuna
super high.
and Bethlehem are the biggest, even in the
Isn't
state.
that, that's just amazing.
It's pushed, and that you could argue is another. Is that necessarily good? We could have a whole debate. There's a lot of whole debates we could have.
Why would you say if we could debate whether it's good?
Because does everybody need to go to college? And I'm not saying
They're
that's
choosing
the case.
to.
Right. But some, for example, I make a joke that if my kids wind up in a well-paying trade, they might be better off. It's sort of assumed that all the kids go to college.
Well, but you could still go in for a trade, even if you go to college. The two are not mutually exclusive.
It goes both ways, right? So many people are burdened with debt, and they come out with these almost, I hate to say, useless degrees.
Yeah, and then you become a plumber. You pay back the debt a lot faster than if you were to not be a plumber and be something else. Right. I mean, you have electricians and plumbers that make more money than doctors.
That is absolutely true, and I would be more than happy for. I say I want my one girl to be an electrician, the other to be a plumber. I would be thrilled. I'm totally serious.
Are you comfortable with the Common Core standards, or not just the rollout, but the Common Core itself?
There's multiple parts to that.
Yes.
The standards are kind of fine. I mean, it's okay to say this is what we would like our kids to learn.
Right.
The problem is that they tied it to so many other things: testing, teacher evaluations, all these things. And to go back to what you were saying, you can't just say, well, let's test everyone to a higher level and that will somehow miraculously fix the school if there's no parent support and no resources. So it's great to say, this is what we'd like everyone to learn. But the question is, how do you get there? And
implement that.
Right, and that's where I think people have problems.
Do you aspire one day to become president of the school board?
That is a job I probably do not think I want.
Okay.
That's a tough gig.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But it's not something that you would ever, I mean, if everyone else were, if you were the most senior member on the school board, you wouldn't want to be president.
It's something to think about.
It would be.
Sure.
You wouldn't rule it out.
I'm not going to go for it. But we'll see what happens.
Oh, wow.
See what life brings us.
Right.
No, because that's what's happening in the Albany School Board now, is that they can't keep a president for more than a few months. I mean, they've had this turnover, rapid turnover, and it's just very strange how many times we have new presidents so quickly.
Right.
There's no consistency. So I just thought I'd mention
Ours has been there a couple of years. She's very good. She is more than welcome to keep the job.
Mark, do you have one more question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you tie in any of your community stuff in with services, or you belong to Congregation Gates of Heaven. Do you tie any of this in?
We're on the Jewish View, so we have to ask you about your Jewish life also.
No, I was on the board there as well. I was the secretary a couple years back. Like everyone, I'm probably not as active as I should be, but it is a great place to raise the kids. Another whole debate we could have is the role of the synagogue in modern Jewish life and how it's changing from that of our parents.
I was just there for Dr. Michael Lozman gave a talk to the men's club. Yep. So I was there for that, and it's very interesting how he did it. They had this breakfast Sunday morning when people were leaving their children off to go to Sunday school, and then they came to listen to the lecture and have a nosh.
Right.
And then when the school day was over, the lecture was over because they had to go bring their kids home.
Right.
All right. Good timing.
You know, it was
Right.
timing of everything. So anyway, yeah.
Doctor, I could say doctor over here, you have many hats on, but in any case, you're doing very well. I mean, I really kudos to you because I know, you know, from my family that what kind of a difficult job you have, and then just to spend extra time for the community, you really are an exception. So keep on going. Mark has bigger and better things for you to do in the community, but we'll be happy for what you do over here professionally and in your spare time, which I don't think you have too much spare time, but extracurricular. And keep on going and doing good work and do it with good health.
And much continued success.
Thank you very much.